Hello, everyone. So, if you don't recognize me, I'm Miss Webster. Uh, I teach civics and US 2. I'm one of the 7th grade teachers. And today we're going to be talking about why we do our PBAs, the tasks and the assessment. So, why do we do PBAs? So, it's important to start back at how do we study history and what are the different ways we study history? Studying history and social studies can be sorted into two categories: the facts and the opinions. The facts are the who, the what, the when, and where. So the people involved, what we know happened, dates, timelines, locations of historical events, things that are not up for debate. We know General Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown. We know that George Washington was the commander of the Continental Army. Those are facts. But then we have our opinions. The why, trying to figure out why historical events happened. So why did George Washington accept the role of commander of the Continental Army? Then we have the interpretation or the significance. What was important about this? What was the most important thing? So that would be, what was the most important battle that George Washington won or lost during the American Revolution? Some people say it's Ticonderoga, others will argue Valley Forge. Then we also have things like the effects. How did this event, person, influence their time, our history, our understanding of the world, etc.? The facts are the foundation of history and studying history and social studies. In class, we learn the facts. The PBAs help us practice our skills with the opinions. Facts prove our opinions, and there are many opinions in social studies and history. For example, there are different interpretations of Thomas Jefferson in the media. For example, the Thomas Jefferson we see in Hamilton, and the one we see in an older HBO miniseries about John Adams. And just to prove my point, we're gonna watch a little clip about each.
States are indebted to a central authority, increasing the power of the central government.
So this Thomas Jefferson is quiet, more pulled back, not as aggressive. Now, this is a cabinet meeting from the HBO miniseries. But then we have our cabinet battle from Hamilton. And you see, ignoring the differences, the physical differences in the actors, this Jefferson is more aggressive, more blunt, more animated. He's aggressive about his opinions. But in each clip, Thomas Jefferson is expressing his concern about the way the debts after the American Revolution are settled. They're both founded on fact. Thomas Jefferson was really opposed to a bringing everybody's debt under the U.S. government's debt. He thought New York should have their debt and Virginia should have their debt, which was very, very minimal. This difference of opinion, this difference of interpretation are built upon the same facts, but they vary vastly. This is the case with most of historical studies. There are going to be varying opinions and interpretations of the same historical events. The study of history and social studies is an ongoing dialogue about the whys, the significance, the effects. Reading different points of views help us grow in our understanding. Now, so how do PBAs sort of fit into this? PBAs help us develop our understanding of how to use facts to prove our opinions. The PBAs have a driving historical question. Every bit of historical research starts with a question. What do you want to know? In high school and college, if you choose that route, you'll develop your own questions based on the materials you're studying. For example, when one of my last classes before I got my undergrad degree was titled James Madison and the Making of America. The professor taught us the facts, he lectured us, but we had to come up with our own research topic. That started with, what do we want to know? Mine ended up being, how did James Madison change his stance from the writing of the Federalist Paper to his position as Speaker of the House during the first Congress? And how did that influence the formation of political parties in America? Now, that sounds like a really big, grown-up, like crazy topic, but that's why we start small with the PBAs. But they're essentially still the same thing. The question, the driving historical question, is what you want to know. In the PBAs, they provide this question for you based on the unit you're studying in class. So, for example, in my civics class, our last PBA was during our unit on the legislative branch. And in my history class, the next one we have is going to be on our unit about imperialism. So these questions directly relate to what you're studying in class. I've pulled an earlier one or a later one about segregation because that's a topic we study in 7th grade history, but it's later. So the question is, how were segregated or separate schools for Blacks and whites, or how equal were segregated schools for Black and white students during the mid-20th century? So every question needs an answer. However, you need to do research to answer the question. In the PBAs, they provide your research for you in the form of documents. Now, for this question, the research or the documents they did for you, they gave you, was an image of a segregated classroom. This is clearly from a white school. Every child in there is white. The teacher is white. And then they have a second one, which is, it says, source, report from investigators who visited a Black elementary school in Dine Hollow, Alabama. So we have an image of a white school and a Black school. That's going to be our research and how we're going to answer our question. Now, once you have your research, you can answer your question. This is called the claim. In English, you might hear it referred to as your thesis. The PBAs provide a claim for you, so you don't have to think up your own yet. Now, the claim they give us for this particular PBA, separate schools for Blacks and whites did not provide an equal education. Because we can see from our research, that's a very nice school, looks kind of like what we have now. But this one, it says, it is in a rundown building, standing in a rocky field, unfit for farming. Only a few battered books are in sight, and we look in vain for maps or charts. We learn that 4 grades are gathered here. The tired teacher agrees to permit us to stay while she continues with instruction. So we have our research, and now we can say, we can answer our question. Separate schools for Blacks and whites did not provide an equal education. because we did our research, we looked at the documents, and that's the claim that is proven by those documents. When you answer the question, though, you have to point to specific pieces of research. This is going to be your evidence in the PBAs. When you get to higher grades, wow, I need to fix that, sorry guys. Higher grades, you can't just hand a teacher a book and say, I found my answer here. You'll write a paper and explain what specific things you learned were the facts that you based your opinion or your claim on. In the PBAs, this is called the evidence. You list the facts you found from the documents. This is where you start the work of the PBAs. They've done the research for you, they've asked the question, they've done the research, and they've given you your claim. You have to provide the evidence or the specific pieces, the facts that prove your claim. For example, evidence number 1 for this PBA, in document A, the picture shows that almost every child has a book of their own. In document B, though, it states there were only a few battered books were in sight. Evidence states clearly and exactly what you see in the documents. You do not pull anything from anything but the documents. So later on, when you're older and you're in high school or you're in college, you're going to have to cite your research. You can't just randomly put in things that you didn't research or find written somewhere. And now that you've pulled just what you see in the documents as your evidence, you need to explain why that supports your claim. Why did you choose that specific piece of evidence? This is called, on the PBAs, reasoning. So the reasoning needs to explain why this evidence proves you right, proves your claim right. For example, reasoning number 1, for this, I'm using the evidence that I pulled about the books for my evidence 1, and I write, the white school and black school have a different amount of books, and books are important to education. So the black and white schools are not equal. And that's why and how we do the PBAs.